Good morning, LinkedIn. I'm Melanie Johnson, founder of the Sussex Social, and I am a social media trainer, coach, and consultant, helping professional businesses and business owners get really clear on what they need to do in their social media and do a lot less of it and do what's right for them in order to build their business. This morning, I'm joined by the fabulous Louise Miller, who is going to be telling us all about redefining productivity to actually just be more efficient and get more done. Louise is, I'm going to have to read this out, everybody, the genie for your genius. Louise, sorry, I got distracted because I was just checking whether we were live. Louise is the genie for your genius. She partners with coaches, consultants, and community builders who have a big, exciting vision, helping them land their ideas in reality, reach more people, and make a bigger impact while taking care of everything they're juggling day to day and being kind to themselves along the way. Louise is described by her clients as a soothing balm and magician. And she shares all of her approaches in her podcast Unfrazzle. So Louise, I'm going to hand over to you. Sorry about the interference in the background. That was just me checking. I'm just ditching my phone. So what even is productivity? Do you want to just kind of talk to us about that and I guess what your definition of it? I know it's your favourite subject.
Yes, please. Thanks, Melanie. Really lovely to be here. So, yeah, I think most people will think about productivity as being about getting more done in less time. I think that's the traditional kind of definition that people will think about. But for me, that kind of induces feelings of panic because it feels like we're in this battle against time. It's like it's me and my to-do list versus time. And I don't like that energy, and it starts to send me into a bit of a panic. So instead of thinking about it as cramming more and more in so that you can get more done and do more doing, I prefer to think of productivity as being about doing what's important as efficiently as you can to create space for what you love. And I think the key differences there are the focus on doing what's important, i.e. not all the things. And the reason that we're doing that is to create space for what we love rather than doing that so that we can do more doing.
Yeah,
it's a little difference, but I think it's an important one.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a confession. I obviously put the wrong title in, but I think that's a good kind of point to tackle because I think we're also, and I see this with my clients, so caught up in this society of like, oh, you must be constantly doing, action all the time. But actually, and I think particularly for smaller businesses and individual business owners who don't have a huge amount of headspace because we don't make it, or time, money, or resource, there are so many things that you could be doing. So it's taking that time to identify what needs to be the thing right now, because having that kind of plan and things will make you more efficient. And just for my personal thing, I think it makes, I know personally, and I think it's just going back to what you said a minute ago, Louise, that when I've got, and I think business owners in particular, all of us have loads of ideas and we get really excited about things. And I think I then get into this point where I just sit there and I don't really do anything because I feel like there's so many things I could be doing that it becomes just this whole overwhelming thing. And, you just kind of stick your head in a paper bag and go, oh God, I can't cope with that. So obviously, Louise, you're the expert in this. So I know from watching your fantastic webinar a few weeks ago that you've got a really kind of simple process and cycle that you use with your clients and I guess in your own work to make people more efficient and happy, I suppose.
Yes, because that is so important. We want to create a life we're enjoying. And you're absolutely right. I think it's very common that, especially with the people I work with and with creatives, that there's all these ideas flying around and that can paralyze us. So the cycle that I talk about, which I call the progress cycle, there's 5 stages of the cycle. And I think, actually, I'll explain what it is and then I'll explain where people go wrong. So the cycle, as I see it, is that we start with the pause. So when you're in that kind of frantic, frazzled, like, kind of a state, or you feel like you just want to put a bag over your head and go, I'm not going to do anything. We need to take that pause just to stop for a minute. And then from pause, we move around the cycle into reflect. And then from reflect, we move into choose. So we make a choice about what it is we're actually going to do. And then we take action. And then we can complete what we started. And then we go back to the pause. So we just keep going around in this cycle of pause, reflect, choose, act, complete. And it sounds so simple, and it kind of is. when you find your way through and around it. But I think where people go wrong is they think productivity all happens in the act part of that cycle, and that need to be constantly taking action and doing and getting stuff done. And if they're not, then they're lazy, or they're failing, or they're doing it wrong. And all that happens when people are in that act kind of phase for too long and just stay stuck there is that they don't finish things. They're bouncing around from one thing to the next. They get distracted, or they're spending all their time on the wrong things. So I think that's a really key thing to think about. And, you know, I think one of the bullet points I had for that webinar you came to was, you know, why taking action is holding you back. And it is because you're not allowing for the other parts of that cycle.
I think that's a really important point. I mean, I think we talked about this just now, but people either stay in action all the time, or they do what I'm probably quite guilty of, and a lot of us, I think, who are watching, is you have the pause thing. And I think quite often, I mean, I'm a mum, so I never really pause because I have lots of other things, but I do with my business. And, you know, and I do try and be quite strict with my time when I'm with the kids to not work and things like that. But I think we go from that pause back into action and miss out the 2 stages in between. And I think that has a really detrimental effect, because actually that is when because we're not doing the reflect part of that, and we're not choosing, we're still going back to trying to do everything at once, or implement that fantastic idea that we had in the pause phase along with everything else.
Yeah, that is really common as well. And I think, shall I talk a little bit more about reflect and choose and how you can make those work for yourself and what that looks like? So I think that when you get to that pause bit and then you're moving into reflect, I think the first thing to do is to remind yourself of the big picture. So look at your vision and your goals. What is it that you're aiming to achieve? And you can start to think, are the actions that I'm taking aligned with this? Am I on track? And a great question to ask in that reflect kind of part of the cycle is, are the things that are keeping me busy actually important and moving me closer to my vision? And that's a big question to ask yourself. And if the answer is no, then hopefully it can be quite straightforward to just go, well, I'm not going to do them anymore. Then that's just busy work and it's not helping me. If the answer is yes, and the things that are keeping you busy are important, in that reflect space, you could start to ask yourself some really nuanced questions around, is this taking me a long time because I'm distracted? Or do I need to refine the process around this thing? And is it feeling like it's clunky and I could simplify it? Is perfectionism getting in my way and holding me back with this? Am I taking ages over it because I want it to be perfect? Is this something that actually I don't need to be doing myself? I could delegate to someone else. And these are all really powerful questions you can ask yourself in that reflect phase, so that when you do come back to act, you know that you're acting on things that are the right things, and you're not going to get caught out with distraction and perfectionism and all of that, because you've had a chance to get curious, reflect a little bit on your own tendencies, your own foibles, and start to do something to address anything that's holding you back. So that's kind of the power of the reflect part of the equation. And then from there, when we move into choose, this is where we come back to what you were saying right at the beginning about having a million ideas a minute. And that is a real blessing and a curse, because it's great when you're a business owner that you're generating loads of ideas, because it means, you'll be able to hopefully grow your business. It keeps you inspired, keeps you excited about what you're doing, but it can also hold you back if it's, they're coming at you so thick and fast, it's really hard to keep up, which then means nothing gets done. Like you said earlier, you get a bit paralyzed by it. So that's where the choose thing is really important, because we need to practice discernment. And this comes after reflect on purpose, because it needs that same kind of quiet energy where you've just thought about your vision, you've thought about your goals, and now you're going to choose with intention which of your ideas you're going to commit to.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to highlight that. That's a great one.
Yeah. And I just a little visual representation, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. I share this a lot, and it usually lands really well with people. So hopefully you can see that. This is from Greg McKeown's brilliant book, Essentialism. And this picture here is lots of, there's energy in the middle that says energy. And this shows what happens when you're putting that energy in lots of different directions. And in the book, he calls that the unfulfilling experience of making a millimeter of progress in a million directions, which I think a lot of us can relate to when you're trying to do everything all at once. Over here, same amount of energy going in one direction, Look how much more progress you can make.
Yeah.
So I just think that's a really powerful visual for the making a choice and why it's so important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think one of the things that I thought was quite interesting, do you quite often find in your work when you say to people pause and they kind of reflect, and the question you ask, are the actions you're taking moving yourself forward? Do you find that people are quite often like, actually, I don't know?
Yeah, and I think that's in itself an interesting question, an interesting thing to unpick. And it's why at the start of every client session that I have, we always start off with vision and goals and looking back at them. And hopefully, if you are feeling really connected into what your vision is and what your goals are, you will know the answer to that question. And if you don't know, it's a sort of thing that can be difficult to figure out on your own in your own head. Yeah. And you can tie yourself in knots with it. So I would say if you're feeling that, find yourself someone you can just talk it through with. And it might be that the thing that you're doing, if it feels really fun to you, but it's not quite lined up with your goals, maybe you just need to shift it a little bit and just change something about it so that it is. Doesn't necessarily mean throwing it out completely, but just maybe being a bit more strategic about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think certainly from some of the reading I've done and research, I think women, and this might be a huge generalization, are much more inclined to keep going with the things that aren't necessarily lighting them up or moving them forward, because actually, if it's working with somebody else, for instance, we don't want to say no, we don't want to kind of let anybody down or hurt themselves. And I think sometimes that's quite, so you just kind of keep going on that path because actually you don't want to admit that perhaps you got it wrong, and we all get it wrong, because running a business and life is just about learning.
And it can feel very public, can't it, when you're a business owner and you're trying to be present and visible and talking about what you're doing. And if suddenly you decide to change something, you can think everyone's going to start judging you and think, they clearly don't know what they're doing. And that is so not the case. Nobody notices. We're all more busy thinking about our own stuff than we are sitting and, going, oh, I wonder what they're doing over there, and just noticing every small thing. So, but it is really hard. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I think going back to that point, because we're going to talk about how this impacts your marketing, I think we all feel like we've said the thing that we do 100 times, so we're so bored in our head and we think everybody knows, but actually they don't, because around the time that you think you've said that message too many times is probably about the time that other people are going to start going, oh, I know exactly what they do, they can help me. And I think it's really hard to get that distance from your business. I mean, I think from a marketing, I think a lot of knowing what's working is quite often probably in your heart of hearts, that you could probably work that out. But I think if we're looking at it from a marketing angle, you can see what's working in the data and analytics. And and I think the next thing is, so we've talked about pausing, choosing and taking a break. I mean, I think lots of people joining. Hello Steph, hello Beth, hello Vishali. Any questions or comments, people do pop them in the chat and Louise and I will try and answer them all at the end. But I think for me, that sort of doing the reflecting and the choosing is so helpful with your marketing. And you said this yesterday, Louise, particularly you get a lot of questions with your clients around marketing, because there are so many different things that we could be doing. It's like, oh, my website's not up great, I need to work on my SEO, I need to go and do a LinkedIn Live now, should I be going on Facebook, do I need a TikTok account, oh, I haven't sent an email out for 4 weeks, all of these classic things. And I think that in itself can be a full-time job, and the people I work with, they feel quite often that they're not doing enough because they're not doing all the things, but then they end up not doing very much at all because they're trying to do all the things. So you go back into that kind of vicious cycle.
Yeah, or spreading itself so thin that you're not doing any of it well.
Yeah, and you don't know, and then you don't know what's working. Yeah. So I think it's with the work that you do, and it's once you've decided on what is that going to be what's going to be the focus, what are the things that I'm the thing or the things I'm going to implement, it's then okay, I think, okay, what marketing is right for me? Ignore all the other stuff, you know. You don't need to be everywhere all the time. And actually, that's really, really hard to maintain. Believe me, I know, I've tried it, even though I tell everybody else not to do it. And I also think from a marketing perspective, people sometimes get consistency confused with frequency. And of course, the two are intertwined. But actually, we've gone into this cycle of thinking, right, being consistent means I need to show up every day and do lots and lots of marketing. And you'll know yourself from having just done relaunched with your program that is really exhausting, and it's very freeing to kind of make those choices, and that can be evidence-based or also can go with, you know, what your gut feeling. And I think by having that clear plan and pausing and thinking about what's working and what isn't, you know, just makes it so much easier to get really clear on your messaging, because you know what you're selling and you know where you're trying to go. Understand that you can actually not worry about TikTok or link. It might obviously probably not for people on here, what did this call, or Instagram or Facebook, or actually I don't need to be spending the money I've spent in the local paper for the last 3 years because that's not serving my business well. And just having those 1 to 2 things that you can really clearly focus on and then really understand what's working. And for me, that obviously that's within doing that is within the action part, but I think that really helps with the rest of the cycle and just helps you to feel less overwhelmed.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think what you do with your clients, I'm sure, is the reflect and choose thing, you know. And what I think there's a crossover as well, perhaps, with how I help people with getting stuff done and productivity. For me, it's very much about, let's just ignore what all the gurus are telling you should be doing.
Yeah.
And think about what we know works for you, what feels good for you, and what's going to be sustainable for you in the long term, which is not going to be the same as what works for me. It's not going to be the same as what works for you, Mel. It's going to be that individual and what they know about themselves and what we can together learn about how they work best. And I think when we're thinking about what's working, yes, the metrics are important. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. But I also think what's important is what feels fun and in flow for you as an individual. Because if you absolutely hate doing something, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it consistently. So I think that's a big part of the reflection and the choice thing also.
Well, Rob's got an interesting question which I'm going to answer in a minute. So I would agree with you, Louise, actually. I think, so I'll give you an example. I did some work during lockdown with this amazing lady who is I think she's an ex-BBC sports journalist, but she specialises in stoma recovery. So she works with people who've had bowel surgery and have a colostomy bag and helps them via a lot of it is Pilates based, how to get back to fitness. And I mean, she's an amazing lady. She had bowel surgery and 18 months later, she ran 100 miles across the Himalayas. Wow. So she's pretty impressive. But she said to me, I hate Instagram. I hate the stoma community on there. And I said to her, well, don't use it then. And every single time we had a call after that, she said, you've just changed my life because I've been almost, someone's given me permission not to do it.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, we could have come up with a whole strategy and plan for Instagram, but she wouldn't have implemented it. And also, I dislike some of this terminology. She wouldn't have been showing up as her true, authentic self because she's so uncomfortable on the platform.
Yeah.
So I do think there is definitely, particularly with your self-marketing, and particularly if you're starting out to do it, start with the things that you love, or just, and again, I'd use this, we talked about this yesterday. I spoke to someone earlier this week and she's got a job, she's got 2 children, she's starting another business, and she's like, I just feel I'm not doing anything because I don't know what to do marketing wise. And I said, I'm probably doing myself. I said, get your website done. I'll put a date in the diary and I'll call you the day after you've told me you've got it done, and we'll see where you are. Because otherwise you're still going to be in this state of, or whatever you want to call it.
And that's an example of that image I just showed, isn't it? If you make that choice, use that discernment, decide what you're going to do, you can put all your, well, as much energy, I know she's got other stuff going on, but all of the energy she has for her business into that, and she'll see the progress. And then once you see the progress, that fuels you to keep you going and keep you taking action. Yeah.
100%. So Rob's, obviously we mentioned print media, and so Rob says, having been in print media, is print dead to modern businesses? Personally, I don't think so. I think there's a space for, I mean, I love a magazine and a book. Like I do not own a Kindle. I do not read anything online, which probably makes me a massive dinosaur, but there you go. Plus it's not.
Well, me too then, Mel, in that case.
But no, I don't think it is. I think particularly, and I mean, I see like there's quite a lot of local magazines, but here where we are in Sussex, and people always pick them up and they love them. But I think it's just another touch point. But you know, people need to make that decision where they're going to be, and obviously that's down to time and resource, but sometimes it's just down to money as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I think there's just no quick wins. Has anyone watching got any more questions or comments? Let's see here. Oh, no, they might be a bit slow to come up. So, Louise, so I think the kind of key takeaways from me really are to have a chat with yourself and just remember to pause, take a break, reflect and make a choice. And actually, you know, some of these questions, like you said, are really difficult for us to answer ourselves, especially when you're really close to a business. So I'd say, you know, speak to, it doesn't necessarily need to be a coach or a mentor. It could just be another business person that you've met in networking you trust, because actually, like, we all share similar challenges in running our own business, and reaching out, I just think is so helpful. So Louise, how can we find you?
Yeah, so actually I also just want to say, with the whole the pause, reflect, choose thing, if you feel like you need some help for that, I have got a resource that will help. So it's a 5-step intervention that is going to help if you feel like you want to make tangible progress, but right now it all feels a bit too much, and it will just walk you through that process of taking the pause, reflection, and then choosing. And you can get a copy of that at bettylouonline.com/intervention.
Cool.
I've just seen Rob's question, number one tip for
productivity.
You were about to say. Do you know, I had a chat with Julie Mann, the habit fixer, about this. It's the pause. I know it sounds a bit like and it's not a hack, it's not a quick fix, it's not a trick or a tip, you know, but taking that time to pause. Because when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling up against it, trying to do all of the things, your to-do list is, you know, it's growing so much longer, you feel like you're having a fight with it. We need to slow down. Your instinct is going to be to speed up and to try and get more done and squeeze more into less time, but you will just end up doing busy work and going around in circles. So the best thing you can do for yourself, I think, for your productivity is to pause.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think and this is why you need to do the reflect and choose, because I think when you pause is when the ideas come.
Yeah. There's lots of different ways of pausing, but yeah. But also the clarity comes, and the sense of perspective can come as well, and all of those things that are not available to you when your head's just spinning constantly. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Rob, if that wasn't what you were hoping for, but I don't do sort of hacks and all of that kind of stuff.
It's all right now, because we can all go and have a little nap after this, and then, you know, we'll all feel much better, be much more productive this afternoon. So links in LinkedIn lives aren't clickable, Louise, as we discussed, but if you want to pop your link in the comments, then obviously people can see you and cut and paste and connect with you if they haven't already. I've got a little shameless plug for myself. So in the I guess the reflection stage of looking at my business, I have got a bit of a survey that's out there just to find out what I've got, because I've got lots of ideas, but I really want to understand what might actually work and what needs to be a focus. And rather just kind of assuming, I thought I'd actually ask some lovely people to help me out. So I will pop the link to that in the chat, and if anybody has got the time to complete it, that would be marvellous. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Rob said he needs a nap. Yeah, so do I, Rob. Always. And Louise, thank you for joining me and sharing your wisdom. It's just been really useful, and I always find talking to you as well just so, well, like I said yesterday, like a virtual hug.
Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.